Henry John Andrews was born in London in 1873. Both his parents were members of the Salvation Army, and his mother's dying wish was that baby Henry, who became known as Harry, should be cared for by Bramwell Booth, the first Chief of Staff and the second General of the Salvation Army. This wish was granted, and Bramwell's sister, Emma, helped care for the young Harry. Andrew's early care and education came at the Salvation Army Nursery at Clapton, London, when Emma Booth was the principal of the officers' training home. As a youth of 15, Harry accompanied the woman he called Mother. When having got married, Booth went with her husband, Commissioner Booth Tucker, to India. His work began within months of arrival in Bombay, even though just a teenager and completely unqualified for any kind of medical work. A chance meeting with an Indian boy with acute toothache led him to reading a dental manual and then using sterilized forceps to remove a decaying tooth. The grateful Indian youngster christened his young healer as the Little Doctor, and, after returning to his village, word soon spread that Andrews was willing to treat those suffering from ailments at his office. As his workload rapidly grew, his nickname soon changed to that of Dr. Secundar, in honor of a Sikh of that name who had, in turn, been known as the Brave One. Aged just 17, he unsurprisingly became an officer in the Salvation Army and, as his amateur medical work increased, he eventually received formal training as a pharmacist. Additionally, he was appointed to assist Major William Stevens at the Salvation Army's Indian headquarters at Nagarcoil and during the 1893 cholera outbreak in Travancore, India. Andrews worked tirelessly to help the sick and dying. On his return to the UK in 1896, he received more training as a dresser of injuries and wounds. However, he was keen to return to India and was soon back in his adopted homeland to assist in the establishment of the Catherineboothhospital in Nagarcoil. 4 years later, he transferred to Anand in Gujarat, where he helped establish the Emory Hospital. In October 1899, he married Gina Smith, who had shared his childhood home in the Clapton nursery established by his mother. Later he underwent more medical training in the USA, graduating from the University of Chicago in 1910, before returning to India in 1912, based at Moradabad. After the outbreak of the Great War in 1914, the Salvation Army placed the hospital at Moradabad under the jurisdiction of the government together with Dr. Andrews and his staff. Once the war began, Andrews, now a lieutenant colonel in the Salvation Army, volunteered for active service but was turned down because of his superlative work as a hospital commandant. However, in June 1917, he was finally commissioned as a lieutenant in the Indian Medical Service and a year later promoted to acting captain. In June 1918, he was awarded the MBE and soon afterwards was permitted to give up his hospital post in order to head to the northwest frontier, where problems continued. On October 21, 1919, Andrews, by now 46, was serving at Kajuri Post, Waziristan, India, now Pakistan. On that day, he heard that a convoy had been attacked in the vicinity of the post, and that men had been wounded. He at once took out an aid post to the scene of action and, approaching under heavy fire, established an aid post under conditions which afforded some protection to the wounded but not to himself. Subsequently he was compelled to move his aid post to another position and continued most devotedly to attend to the wounded.
We were ready to evacuate Mughal Kot by 6:30 a.m., but waited for the Zob militia cavalry to appear. At 8:30, decided we could not wait longer, so we pushed off. It was at once apparent that the men were demoralized. The enemy were in considerable force, but we should have been able to cope with them with moderate casualties had the men played up. However, they soon started to run, many of them throwing away their arms. We couldn't stop them, except in small bunches here and there. Poor old Captain Byrne Murdoch was killed outright, sitting by me in a graveyard. Trail was killed just outside Mogul Cot Outpost, and Lieutenant McCrosty was probably killed about the same place. The whole business is an appalling disgrace. After 5 miles, I met Captain Riley at the Zob militia, and we got under the Zob pickets, the enemy being checked for a bit. Captain Riley was killed shortly afterwards. So, Doc put on field dressings and we pushed on again by a circuitous route to Fort Sandeman. For the last 15 miles I rode. The mare was wonderful. In spite of 2 cuts and a graze and losing lots of blood, he carried me all the way down. We arrived at Fort Sandeman at 4:30 a.m. Remnants of the South Waziristan militia straggled in over the next 24 hours. 4 NCOs and 142 other ranks. Of these, 22 were wounded. Out of 320 rifles brought away from Mogul Cot, only 9 arrived at Fort Sandeman.
Finally, when a Ford van was available to remove the wounded, he showed the utmost disregard of danger in collecting the wounded under fire and in placing them in the van, and was eventually killed whilst himself stepping into the van on the completion of his task. Andrews was buried in Banus Cemetery, India, now Pakistan, and his posthumous VC was presented by King George V at Buckingham Palace to his widow on November 2, 1920. His name is commemorated on the Delhi Memorial, India Gate, and there is a painting of him by Joan Fairfax Whitesfield Ta, the regimental headquarters of the Royal Army Medical Corps in Camberley, Surrey. He was energetic, brimful of vitality, extremely modest, quiet, true and reliable, completely unselfish. His goodness infested all those around him. A man with broad human sympathies, and a splendid type of medical missionary in India. Good operator. Crowds of people flocked from various parts to be treated by him. He designed and supervised the construction of the Salvation Army Hospital at Moradabad. Model of what a district hospital should be in India. Well organized and administered, for such a man the future life could have no cause for apprehension, and we may be certain that he was welcomed to the other world with the words, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." Today, as we commemorate the 101st year of the bravery of Dr. John Henry Andrew, we salute the tradition of courage and valor of the Salvation Army. Their sacrifice is a source of inspiration for all the soldiers in India. This country will always remember them.